single image on our screen, just like we see here, is going to be no good for our project. So what we're going to do instead is to select a random image from an array. And the way we're going to do this is with JavaScript. So we can go to our project folder, create a new file, and this will be the script.js, which we then need to link in our index. Just above the closing body tag, create the script with the source, and this is simply script.js. Let's test this is linking inside the script with a simple alert. I'm going to just say any message inside here, so hi. And if we reload the browser, we should see the message if this is successfully linked. Now we're going to remove this. Now the next thing we need to do is to create an array, which is going to include the image name and also the number of items. This also needs to correspond with all of the images inside of this folder. So to save a little time, if we go over to GitHub and use the same link that we used earlier, inside of the number match game, take a look for a file called the array.js. And then inside of here, we need to copy the contents of this array. So grab all of these items, making sure to grab the square brackets on the top and the bottom. Paste this into our script. And these names all correspond to the same images which are inside the folder. So do be aware, if you have used your own images, you will need to change the image name to match each one. You will also need to change the number of items too. So for example, this bananas.jpg has 6 bananas, and this is set on the line just below. Since this is an array, we can select each one of these objects inside of here by the index number. The index number is the position inside of the array. So the first item is position 0, this is position 1, position 2, and this is how we're going to select an image to display in our project. So down at the very bottom, just after our array. And so we can select each one of these images randomly. We need to generate a random number. So let's store this inside of a constant called random number. And we can use a JavaScript math function called random. So math.random. This will generate a random number between 0 and 1. 0 is included, but number 1 isn't. So this will go through to 0.999, for example, and we can log this inside the console to check our output. So log out our constant into our project, and we can reload. Right click and inspect. And each time we reload, we get a different random number. Inside of this array, we have 20 separate images. So the way we can check how many items is inside of an array is by selecting the array name, which is images, and then use a property, which is length. If we reload this, we now see we have 20 items inside of our array. So we can now use this to multiply our random number. Let's try this inside the console and refresh. This will now give us 20 different options, so our number will either begin with a 0 right through to 19. And we can also round this down. If we cut out this section, we can use a different JavaScript function called math.floor. And this is going to round down to the nearest whole number. Let's try this out over in the console. We're now left with a random number between 0 and 19, which gives us 20 different options. The way we can now use this random number, if we remove the console log, is by selecting our images array, and we can select any of these images by the index number. So number 2, like we mentioned before, this would be 0, 1, and 2. This would select the blocks. But instead of hard coding this value, we can type in the random number. After this, we can use the dot notation to select either the image name or the number of items. We want the image name, and we can also store this inside of a constant called random image name. Let's try logging this to the console. Let's grab this and paste this in. Randomly selecting one of our image names. So now we know this is working, we can now use this to set our image source. First of all, let's create a image element, store this inside of a image constant, and we can create an element with document.createElement. The element type we want to create is an image, which is img. Then we can grab our image variable and set the source attribute. And this image source needs to point to our images folder. So we can set this as a template string with the backticks. This will allow us to insert our random image name as a variable. So our images folder, /. Just like earlier, we use the $ symbol and the curly braces to insert our variable. This now leaves us with an image element created, and the next thing we need to do, if we go to the index page, is to add this inside of our image container. So just above, let's create a constant called image container. And we can select this with document.getElement by ID. The ID of image container. Now we have this reference, we can select our image container and then append child. The child element we want to append is this image from just above. And we should now be able to save this and see this in our project. So each time we now load, we see an image which is displaying inside the browser. And this has been randomly selected from our array. We still see this image just above because this is still in place in our index.html. So we can now remove this element. And now if we refresh the browser, we just see a single random image. So this is an important step, but we don't want to refresh the browser to get a new image each time. So in the next video, we'll take a look at how we can do this with a timer.